Howdy folks, and welcome to Front Row Racing's track guide for Texas, Austin, Texas in America. An interesting circuit, a few difficult sectors, a few very easy sectors, some fantastic corners like this one we're approaching here, turn 1. Overall there's 20 corners around this track, and many of them lead from one into the other, a lot like the sector 1 at Japan. So you get one corner wrong and you get many corners wrong. Now for those of you that are interested, we've got track guides for all of the circuits up to America, and they are aimed to help those people that are struggling on a track or a corner. You may find what you need to help you out here. Like I say, aimed at helping those who are struggling rather than those who are already quick, although some people who are already quick do find these quite useful. Okay, so for the Texas circuit, your aerodynamic setup is going to be quite important around here. You need a bit of grip, but you also need a bit of speed. But the straights aren't really very long, so you don't need too much speed. At the end of the day, you do need a car that can handle sector 1. You need to be confident around here. Be confident in your car, in its ability to turn in and keep the power down. And also timing can be very crucial around here as to how much speed you can carry through a corner. So hopefully we'll cover a lot of those points on the guide lap. We're going to do the usual thing. This is obviously the warm-up lap on lap 1. We're going to do guide lap, late braking, being off the racing line, on the racing line, then looking at ETOs and pit entries and exits. Okay, so as we head up towards turn 1, I'm going to let it play through turn 1 as I introduce our good mate Ted Kravsticks. Although he's getting a bit fat, he's been eating too many barbecues and fried chicken. So there we go, turn 1, Doddle. Okay, it's not that easy, as I'm sure you're aware. This is a corner where it's very, very easy. I mean, I say this a lot, it's very, very easy to lose a lot of time in this corner. At the end of the day, you've got one aim, and that is to try and get this front left tyre clipping the apex curb up here. If you're nowhere near it, it's probably for one or two or three things. You're braking too late, which means you can't get the car turned in, or perhaps you're turning in too late. Both of those will have a factor. A third one is, if you're not using all of the road, it's going to make this corner much more difficult. So do make sure you are all the way over to next to the curb. I know some people might like to actually use the curb. Personally, I don't. Being a wheel user, if I try braking on the curbs, it just locks up the tyres and I can't turn it. So I tend to stay on the tarmac. At some corners I will hit the brakes hard on the tarmac, then move over to the curb to use all of the road. I don't think I really do that here though. So how do we do turn 1? Like I say, it's not the most difficult. So keep an eye on the revs and the gears, and as we approach the 100-metre marker board, just before we get there, we're now on the brakes. And you want to be on the brakes hard here. Because it's very uphill, you can brake hard here. But if you're braking hard still, all the way at the crest, you're not going to make the corner. It's going to lock up, the car's going to go light. So just before the 100 metres, hard on the brakes. Work it down the gears and try and change into second gear as late as possible. We're now going to approach the 50-metre marker board, but we want to ignore that. If we turn in at this point, it's too soon. You may just be able to see the apex, well, the corner over here, there's a cone. The cone is not the apex of the corner. If you're hitting the cone, you're cutting the corner. So where do we turn in? Well, this is going to be part judgment on your own part really, as to how much you've braked, your setup and all that kind of thing. Now I've been doing a lot of laps around here, and there isn't really a mark anywhere on the road, no tyre marks that you can use as a turn in. I've just been doing it on judgment, and then I've been looking on this video where it was that I was actually turning in, so that I can point out something to you that works quite well for me. The only problem is you may struggle to see it. Now as we play it forward in slow motion, we'll see the wheel starts turning now. Now the only thing I can really point out to you is we've got the red AstroTurf just up here. Now if you're turning in at this point, it's too late. You're not going to go as fast around this corner as possible. The only other thing we can go on is the curb. Now, like I say, it's not going to be easy to see because of the speed you're going, but you've got white, red, white, red. This red one, 2 before the AstroTurf, use that as your turn-in point. If you turn in at this point, you can be cautious on your throttle here because the car wants to go light. You can get it turned in. It's a bit of a blind corner, but then the apex is going to come into view. Now the aim is to try and get the left front tyre to clip this curb. As you see, I'm coming off the steering a bit so that I can get a bit of throttle on. If I keep it fully locked, I'm going to kick the rear out. But what that does mean is I don't take as much of the curb as I would like, but I am right next to it. Once we're in this position, you kind of want to be aggressive, but you've got to be careful because the car is still unbalanced with its weight. The rear end's going to go light. So yes, you want to get the power on aggressively, but you've got to make sure that the grip is there to do so. Personally, I tend to short shift second gear. I mean, I know the revs are showing full revs at the moment, but it's not at its maximum speed in second gear. Now, I tend to short shift second gear for one reason, that is the car's already light and there's a bulge in the road here. And if I stay in second gear, when I go to third, it tends to get light again. Whereas if I go to third gear, as I just have done now, I can now go flat out in third gear. Now you'll see that the revs are already fully on. However, I'm not really wheel spinning the car and I've still got plenty of mile an hour left in the gear before changing to fourth. So make sure you carry third gear all the way to about 118 mile an hour is my ballpark figure I go for third gear everywhere. Before you change into fourth, and the reason for that is if you change into fourth too soon, it bogs down, and you don't get the acceleration. If you wait till 118 mile an hour, you change to fourth, and it picks up straight away. Okay, I'll pull it back so that you can see that at full speed. I'm then going to let it play all the way through turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, all the way through turn 6. And that's because those corners all lead one into the other, and it's essentially one big corner that goes in different directions, so don't just straight line it. So we'll go through it at full speed, because what you do, I mean, turn 2 is an easy one, flat out. I don't like to use the curb because it unsettles the car, but from here now, what you do at this corner dictates what will happen here, 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 and here, and then here. It's the same as Suzuka's Sector 1. What you do at the first corner will dictate where you end up here, what speed you're doing, and whether you're up or down on your lap time. Now I will admit I don't get this perfectly, but then I can't go showing you all of my tricks, but I will tell you the ideal way to do it, or the ideal way I want to do it. But I could have redone this particular sector, but I decided to keep it as it is so that you can see what to do if you do make a slight error, because this is where you need to be confident and just go for it. Try and keep the car on the road, obviously, though. Okay, so as we approach turn 3, we're going to move the car over towards the right-hand side of the racetrack. It's where the grip is, it's where the racing line is, and it also helps us with angle of approach through this corner, which helps us in the next corner. Now, what I find I'm doing is I'm moving over to the right-hand side, but not using all of the track. We've got this black mark on the road, and as I get to that, I start turning for the corner. You'll see I'm now up into 6th gear. We can see the apex of the corner, and we want to get 2 wheels on this curb. Don't get 4 wheels on it, because this white line does dictate the edge of the track. Curbs are not on racetracks, they're next to racetracks. Okay, so use this curb absolutely flat out in 6th gear. But because we've taken it that way, we are now aiming at turn 4. So we can go in a straight line towards turn 4 pretty much, but I do give it a little bit of a sweep. And again, get 2 wheels on this curb. Now I will admit I haven't done here, but this is where a problem is starting, and it's going to hurt me 3 corners down the road. Because I haven't used this curb, I haven't got two wheels, it is going to catch me out later on, unless you're quick enough to realise it. So if you're not on the apex curb here, you've already got to be prepared to go a bit slower later on. Okay, so ideally use that curb on the right. Once we're beyond that corner, stay flat out, knock it down to 5th gear. Like I say, stay flat out. This corner, again, you want to use the curb. We can stay flat out, get two wheels on this curb, and don't be afraid of getting quite a lot of the car on the curb. I mean, you'll see here my right tyre is on the white line, so that would be bordering on an ETL. The stewards, in a way, would be in their right to give me an ETL for that one, depending on how cruel they want to be. So, yes, by all means, use the curbs, but don't use too much. Okay, we're still in 5th gear here. Now, we have had a bit of an ease off of the throttle caused by not being on the curb the corner before. Now, for turn 6, ideally, 5th gear, absolutely flat out around this first part of turn 6 with a tiny ease off, and then flat out around the next part. It means you can apex the corner around here at about 145 mile an hour. But because I missed the curb earlier on, I've made a little mistake here. I've had to get off the throttle, and because I missed that curb, I know I've now got to knock it down to 4th gear, because if I don't, I'm not going to make the corner around here. So we can see at this point we're sliding too far to the left. We're still in 5th gear, but any moment I'm going to knock it down to 4th gear so that I can get the front end of the car tucked in. There we go, down to 4th gear. Now I can get the front end of the car tucked into this apex. And you do want to get two wheels on this curb. It's the faster way and helps you on the exit. So get your two wheels on this curb. This is the position you want to end up in after all of those corners. So if you find that you're going off way over there, then you're going to need an ease off or go down a gear, or perhaps take the first corners differently. Okay, so we'll back it up and we'll go through those at full speed, and we'll see if you can hear the moments where I lift, because like I say, ideally I wouldn't lift until we're halfway around turn 6 and then flat out again in 5th gear. So listen out for the throttle usage. And there we go. I've probably made it look easier than it actually is there, but that is slower than taking that turn 6 flat out in 5th gear with an ease off in the middle. It may not seem like it, but it is, trust me. And if you don't trust me, try it yourself, and even if you get it wrong, I know I'm right. Okay, so turn 7. This is one of the corners that I absolutely detest on this particular track. And I found while I was practicing, this is where I needed to be more confident. It's a weird corner because you kind of have to turn in very early for it. But my, what's the word? Intuition says, no, don't turn in yet. So I spent a lot of times approaching this corner, turning in, turning out, turning in. By that point, it was too late. Whereas what I needed to do was just be confident and turn in, because I kept missing the apex by a bloody mile. But if I just turned in when I initially was, I'd have made it. Okay, so how do we take this corner? Well, like I say, it is a bit of a tricky one. So I'll play it at full speed. I'll actually play it full speed through this corner and the next two, because again, this corner leads on to how you take the next two. Not bad, no major dramas, took it fairly quick. So we'll have a look at how it is that I've actually done that. Well, obviously we've come round turn 6, we want to sacrifice the exit, we don't want to be anywhere near that left hand curb. We want to take the car back towards the right hand side of the circuit. And then we've got this shadow across the road. Now as I get to that shadow, you may notice I have just knocked it down from 5th to 4th. Now we want to apply a tiny amount of brake. That's what I do anyway. The other option is downshift a bit earlier and ease off. But I was finding it difficult to turn in, or at least keep the car on the road on the exit. Now for the turn in point. Well, there isn't really a mark on the road or anything like that I can say turn in at. So we've got this red patch of AstroTurf next to the curb. So as we start getting towards the end of that, we're now turning in. So that is, for me, my guide of when to turn in here. And like I say, be confident with this corner. Now the game says that you take this corner in 4th gear. Personally, I'm struggling to take it in 4th gear. If I knock it down to 3rd, I can go through it much quicker and position the car where I want to on the exit. So as we're turning in, I've now knocked it down to 3rd gear. This allows me to get the front end going where I want it to go, aiming at the apex curb. Again, we want to use this curb, get 2 wheels on it, and then sacrifice the exit. You do not want to get anywhere near that curb over there. The reason for that is we need to get the car over to the left hand side of the road for this corner coming up, or these 2 corners coming up. And these 2 corners, it's different how you drive them on 2013, but they're still a pain in the backside. Okay, so get your car over to the left hand side. Don't be afraid of using a little bit of this red patch on the right, on the left here, but obviously make sure you still got 2 wheels on the road. Now as we get to these tyre marks, you'll see as we're approaching the tyre marks just up here, obviously steering is straight at the moment. It's going to start applying now as we're at these tyre marks. Use those as your guide. Now what you're going to have to do is be intelligent with your throttle usage into this corner. On 2013 you could be much more aggressive with the throttle around this right hander and the left. I'm finding it's not the case with these cars. They have less downforce. So clever throttle usage in 3rd gear. Try and get it aimed in towards the apex and towards the crane, and you get 2 wheels on this curb. Using this curb is the preferred way. It helps you out with the next corner coming up. Don't use too much, but use enough for it to just help you around the corner. When you get to the end of this curb, start turning left. Now ideally I'd rather have my car just about here, but this is where your throttle usage, what you do as you're going around the corner, the less throttle you use, the more chance of having your car in this position, the faster you may be able to take this corner. So you're just going to have to practice this one and see how you're handling it and work on it. This left-hander used to be flat out on 2013, not so much on 2014. So anyway, end of the curb on the right, we can start flicking it over to the left. The change of direction can cause the rear to go light, so be careful. Again, use this curb, don't take too much though. And then when we're in this position, we want to be aggressive. You want to carry the speed through the corners and be aggressive on your throttle out of them. If you're on off throttle through those corners, more chance of spinning the rears up. So that's where the clever throttle usage comes in. Being able to hold it on a bit and accelerate is better than being off throttle and booting it. So anyway, once we're in this position, we want to be as aggressive as possible. Okay, so we'll go back and we'll play these 3 corners at full speed, and then we'll go through the turn 10, which is flat out, and then we'll head down to the hairpin. So there we go, there's the aggressiveness. Here's turn 10, flat out, turn 11, tricky little hairpin. But I find I've got a nice little way to take this corner, which makes it a very simple corner every single lap. Every single time, do it this way, and the corner's never a problem. And it's quite self-explanatory to a degree. Okay, 2 things to keep an eye on: the 100-metre marker board and the gears and the revs. Now we're going to go up to 7th gear. I could hold it in 6th there, but I just prefer to go up to 7th. We're going to get the car over to the right hand side of the road, and as we approach the 100-metre marker board, the revs have now dropped off. See that? See, the revs are on, get to the 100 metre marker board, and the revs are gone. So now we're on the brakes. So we're on the brakes at the 100 metre marker board and brake hard. If your F1 car is going fast, you can brake very hard. You can't keep the brakes on hard because the slower the car goes, the more chance of locking it up. But if you're at high speed, you can brake hard and then back off your braking. And that's very handy at this corner and the next one coming up. And turn 1 as well. So brake hard at the 100 metre marker board, keep it in a straight line, work your way down the gears. We then want to get it into second gear while we are still in a straight line. We are now in second gear, which means the car is ready for the corner. There's no changing down the gears as we're halfway around the hairpin. The car is ready for the corner. And by doing this, it means you can get on the power much sooner. You can drive around the hairpin instead of slow down around the hairpin. Okay, turning point now is crucial. Now what I've been doing visually is this last white patch on the curb is my turn-in point. That's where I turn in. However, watching the replay, it looks slightly different. So the white patch is my turn-in point, but what you'll see is the wheel starts turning, but the car keeps going straight. Then when I get to the white patch, the car starts turning. So as we approach it, we'll see the wheel is turning now, and as we're at the white patch, the car is now properly turning. So we've basically got the turn initiated just before this white patch. If you're doing it after this or during this, it's too late. Okay, doing it this way means we can get the car turned in, aimed at the apex, and we do want to use a little bit of this apex curb. Taking the tighter line, I find, is the faster line. We don't want to take too much curb, and we also do not want, I mean that's close to an ETL, but I am still on the tarmac, and you do not want to be hitting the cone. If you're hitting the cone, you're off the track. On the exit of this corner, you need to kind of be cautiously aggressive. We've got a fast bit coming up, but if you're too heavy on the throttle here, you're going to spin the rear out. So you need to be aggressive but using the grip. This is another corner where I sometimes like to short shift second and then use all of third gear. But once we're in this position, we're in a straight line and we can go. Okay, so I'll pull it back, we'll go full speed. And for these hairpins, I do like to try and keep the throttle on a little bit as I'm going into the corner, and that's what I'm on about by driving through a corner. I mean, I'll just pull it back there, and I'll try and pause it at the moment that you can hear that I'm on the throttle to drive through the corner. Here, I'm now driving through the corner. I'm not slowing the car down anymore, I'm on the throttle. And this is what can gain people a lot of lap time. Driving through a corner instead of slowing down through a corner. Okay. Now we head down the long straight, DRS, using all of third gear again. Heading up to turn 12, we'll play it flat out. Can be a bit of a tricky corner this. I've got a rhythm that I like to take it in, which tends to work quite well for me, but you do have to be careful on the exit. Pendulum effect can bite you here. But I have a rhythm for the braking zone. This is a corner I used to struggle on in F1 2012 and 2013 because I've never really been a huge fan of this track because it's better driven the wrong way round, to be honest. But this is a corner I always struggled at. I always wanted to brake at the 100 metre marker board, and I could never make the corner at any speed. So in the previous games I did learn to brake that little bit earlier or do downshifts that little bit earlier, and it made the corner so much easier to do. And it's the same for me on 2014. Okay, so as we approach the 150 metre marker board, keep an eye on the gear indicator. Okay, there's the 150 metre marker board. We're now down into 7th gear. I'm not on the brakes, I've just gone down a gear. So I'm still flat out, but I've gone down to 7th gear. Tiny little bit of engine braking. Then on judgment, at about 125 meters, I am now hard on the brakes. Because we're at high speed, you can brake hard at high speed. So we brake hard at about 125 meters. And I work it with my gear changers. I like to have a pattern to how I do it, whether it be, for example, if you need to go down 4 gears, yes, you can just whack it down 4 gears. But sometimes it may be more beneficial to knock it down 1, have a gap, then knock it down 3. Or knock it down 2, have a gap, knock it down 2. Or knock it down 3, have a gap, knock it down 1. It all depends on how your car handles with that final gear change. Because if your car is kicking out on you on that final gear change, you're downshifting too soon. And that's where your rhythms of gear changes can come in very handy. And that's what I do here. I do 1, gap, then down 5. That gets me to second gear. So as we approach the 100 meter marker board, keep an eye on the gear indicator. You see you go down at 1, 2, 3, 4, well that's 3, 4, 5. Now we're focusing on turning point because the car is set. It's ready for the corner. Now for me, the 50 meter marker board is the turn in point. So as we are getting next to that, we can start turning in. And this is a corner where again you want to use the curb ideally, get 2 wheels on the apex curb, but not too much. And if you're running very low ride height, you may struggle using some of these curbs. I mean, I could still have used another tyre width or 2, but I'm fairly happy with how this has gone so far. But on the exit, you have to be cautious. Yes, you want to carry the speed and you want to drive away, but as you saw at full speed, it's very easy to get the rear end kicking out. And that's all to do with the camber of the corner. It's got a bit of a dip in the middle of it, which can bounce the car. And if you put the throttle on at just the wrong point, it can kick the rear out. Okay, so we'll play that through at full speed and you can hear the gear changes. He's slightly too aggressive on the throttle. Now into turn 13. Another horrible little corner. The entry's alright, but the exit is a tricky one. Now for the entry, I've seen over the seasons many people struggle with this corner. Well, there's a nice little helpful hand here for you. Get your car over to the left hand side of the circuit, and then there's tyre marks on the road. When you get to these tyre marks, downshift, 3rd gear. A slight use of the brakes, downshift to 2nd gear and start turning in. This is an apex curb where if you can get 2 wheels on it, do so, but be careful. This corner can have the tendency to kick the rear end out. So taking it like this and just using a little bit of curb is absolutely fine. What's more important though is the exit. If I go full throttle here, I'm going to spin the rear out. So you've got to be cautious on the exit of this corner. Let the car get the grip, get the aerodynamics working, and work your way through 2nd gear, work your way through 3rd gear. And then we're on to a bit of a Mickey Mouse section. So we'll play this corner at full speed and then we'll play the next 3 corners at full speed as well. So listen to the caution. This corner's flat out, and then we're into this tricky left-hander. And it is a tricky left-hander. I've seen many people take many different lines through these corners, and I've even seen people try overtaking here. It can be done, but it's better if you don't try overtaking heading into this left-hander, because chances are if you throw it up the inside, you're going to end up off the track on the right-hand side or in a collision. So be very, very careful. Okay, so anyway, we've worked our way to this position. We're in 4th gear. We want to get the car over to the right-hand side of the track. Yes, I'm turning left, but I still want to use as much of the road as possible. Then we've got these tyre marks. This is your braking point. Now you don't need to brake hard and you don't need to brake heavy, but you do need to brake here and get it down into 3rd gear. There we go. and then we'll get it down into second gear, and we are still using a lot of the road. And then at these tyre marks we want to really start trying to turn in for the corner. Now obviously it is a completely blind corner. However, if you take it this way, you will find that the apex curb will come into view, so you can see where you're trying to get it turned in. Now I am gradually turning in more, and now turning off a bit, and that's to make sure we can get the car pointed towards the apex curb, and then make sure we don't take too much. Now this is a curb that, yes, use the bit of the white and red bit, but don't hit the sausage. Very easy again to lose control of your car at this corner. Ideally, I'd like to drive through this corner like I did the hairpin earlier on, but it's a much more difficult corner to do so because of the nature of the braking zone and the nature of the entry to the corner. Because we're already turning, if we go too aggressive on the throttle, we're just going to lose the rear. So focus on turning and getting yourself into this sort of position. On the exit, cautiously aggressive again. You want to carry the speed, use second gear, but if you're too aggressive here, you're going to spin out the rear tyres. So for anyone that is struggling on that particular corner, I would say use the old adage of, to start off with, go faster to go slower. If you're going off at that corner or losing the rear, slow down. Yes, you'll be going slow, but you'll be on the road. If you're on the road, you've got the potential to go quicker than if you are off the road. So go slower to go faster. It'll help you in the long run. Okay, those corners then at full speed. And now we're into a fantastic triple right-hander. Turns 16, 17, 18. Seems like a very easy set of corners. However, it does have the potential to smack you around the face, tell you you've been a naughty boy, and throw you off the racetrack. And that all depends on which bit of these corners you apex. Now there's 3 apexes to these 3 corners, because obviously they are classed as 3 corners. Turn 16 is here, 17 is around the corner, and 18 is just after that. Now for turn 16, get your car over to the left hand side of the road, and then do not apex this corner. You do not want to get near this curb, because if you do, it will send you wide at turn 18. So don't focus on apexing this corner. Your goal is to apex this corner coming up, and by doing this, it means we're in a good position for turn 18, which is sort of middle of the road. Middle of the road around this corner is fine, because from here we can let the car run out to the left hand side of the track without going off the circuit. Now you'll see on the later laps, I apex the first part, I apex turn 16, and you'll see what happens. I also enter it massively wide at turn 16, like a million miles away from the apex. So if you don't believe me, keep an eye out for those laps later on, because I do show you what will happen if you don't do it this way. I mean, this is a very simple way to do it, but I do know that people can often struggle here. Okay, so full speed through 16, apex 17, middle of the road for 18, let it run to wide. See, we did literally all the way to the edge of the circuit. Now imagine if we were wider at turn 18, you'd be off the track here, and you do not want to be over there. Okay, turn 19. I love this corner. I don't know why, I just really like that corner, and I think it's because it's one of those corners where if you perhaps drive it in the way you think it should be driven, it's a tricky little corner. But if you drive it a different way, the way I'm about to show you, it's actually a very fast corner. A very fast corner. A corner that you can be actually quite aggressive round without cutting the corner or running wide on the exit. It is deceivingly fast. I Okay, now obviously you've seen we went to the left hand side of the track. We're now going to work our way over to the right hand side of the road. We want to use as much of the road as possible. Now we've got a tyre mark just here, and as we get to that tyre mark, we start turning, we do a downshift. We're now down into 5th gear. I haven't hit the brakes. We're nowhere near the apex of the corner yet, but by doing this early, it allows us to drive through this corner. And I'm waving my hand pointing at the corner, but you can't see it. It allows us to drive through this corner instead of going slow through it. So those first set of tyre marks, downshift. At this next set of tyre marks, you may need to give it a little dab of brakes down into 4th gear. Now, try and follow the tyre marks and aim for the apex of the corner. We're in 4th gear, and now we're at this position. We can graduate our throttle to drive through this corner. The better you get this corner, the more aggressive you're going to be able to be with your throttle. This is a curb that, again, you do want to use. Get 2 wheels all over this curb, and once we're in this position, floor it. Just go. Now obviously we don't want to be running wide here, we want to keep it on the road, but you can be very aggressive through that corner. Very aggressive through that corner. So be confident. Get your car ready for the corner nice and early and take the speed through the corner. So we'll go back and play that at full speed from halfway through these corners, because how you take these corners can dictate how you take the next corners. Because if you take these all wrong, you're going to be in the wrong position when you get near those tyre marks, and being in the right position there is crucial. Okay, so full speed, and we're aggressive on the throttle. Okay, the final corner, and it's a weird one. I actually think through all of the track guides I've ever done, I am about to give you the weirdest, possibly most awkward braking point for a corner ever. And I was actually, when I was doing my practice, I was thinking, no, it can't be that, it can't be there. But every time I tried braking somewhere else, I was either braking too soon or way too late. So it worked out, okay, it is there. Now, I'm going to try and get the car in its position. Move the car forward a little bit. As we approach the corner, you're going to see just here, there's 3 shadows. We've got 1, 2 and 3. You might not be able to see it too well, but there's a shadow for the UBS sign, there's another shadow after that, and then there's a shadow just before the corner itself. Now here comes the weird bit. The braking point is the shadow in the middle. However, it decides it's going to do one before you get there. So by the time you get there, the shadow is no longer there. What is causing that shadow, I'm not sure. But that is my braking point. So as we're approaching this corner, I'm looking at that middle shadow and thinking, okay, that's my braking point. So as we approach the corner, we're thinking, yeah, okay, still see the shadow there. Oh, okay, the shadow has gone. The shadow is no longer there. Thankfully though, the shadow is pretty much here at the start of these tyre marks. So yes, it's a weird braking zone, braking marker, but at least you got to back up with these tyre marks. So as we get to these tyre marks, hit the brakes. Don't be afraid to get on the brakes quite hard. Work it down your gears, and then your turning point's going to be a bit about judgment, but you can go with the end of the tyre marks here. Turn it in, but be careful on the throttle on approach to the corner, because if you're on throttle too much on this curb on the left, it can spin you. Also, if you take too much, it can spin you. But you do want to get 2 wheels on the curb. I've taken a little bit too much here. I would say that that is an ETL, so I have taken too much curb here. So make sure your car is a little bit further over to the right. But once you're over this apex curb and in this position, you want to be able to be aggressive on the throttle. So while you're practicing, don't be afraid of getting a shed load of wheel spin here. That'll come with practice of being able to carry the throttle through the corner and power out of it. Okay, so we'll do these 2 corners at full speed, and then that's it for the guide lap. So the disappearing shadow is the braking point. Cautiously aggressive throttle usage. Okay, now we're on to what happens if you late brake. We're going to brake just after the 100 metres for turn 1, and it is just after the 100 metres, and we're not making the corner at any kind of decent quality. Okay, we don't have to brake for these corners, but we would usually ease off, so I'm not, downshift, so I'm not going to bother. I'm going to take it flat out. Cut a corner, now going massively wide, and you don't want to be out there. So that's what happens if you just try and take it all flat out. Obviously now we're all messed up for these 2 corners. But as we head down to the hairpin, I mentioned earlier, we brake just before the 100, or just before at 100, slightly past, and it is only slightly past. We're missing the apex. We've made the corner, but a lot slower than had we just braked that meter earlier. Now, I did say earlier I'd do a downshift at 150 up here, but we're not going to do it. We're going to wait for the 100 metres and hit the brakes. And we're getting round the corner, but nowhere near the apex. It's not even in screen. Brake just after the tyre marks, and we're off the track. So although some of my braking points may seem too soon, actually they're not. We missed the tyre marks again. We've had to slow the car down a lot just to stay on the road. Okay, apex the first part, turn 16. With apex 17, but now we're massively wide at 18. That's what happens if you turn in. Someone's phoning me, but I'm not going to bother answering it. Okay, we brake at the white line and we don't make the corner. I'm going to have to pause it there. Okay, now that phone has stopped ringing, I didn't answer it. I just thought, well, I'm going to press pause until it's finished ringing and then I'll carry on. So I don't know whoever it was ringing me, but you rang me at the wrong time. I'm doing a recording. F off. Right, okay, so now that was looking at late brakes, so now we'll have a look at what at being off the racing line. So if you're going for overtakes or perhaps defending, you can go for a move up here into turn 1, brake at my usual point, but you're going to have to get it down to first gear and be careful because it's still going to run you wide. And what I would say is, if you're being attacked into turn 1, stay right. Stay right on the approach to turn 1. Because if someone's going to go up the inside of you into turn 1, they're going to go as wide as I have here. So if you just be careful on your entry, you can undercut them and just come flying back past them down here. It'll really annoy them, and it's a great move to pull off. Okay, 2 cars can go side by side through all of these corners, but it does mean that you have to go very slow. Go down additional gears, off the throttle, down to 4th already. Gone back up to 5th, but we've had to come back down to 4th. Up the inside here, it's not very nice because it wants to send you wide, and the same happens here. Going for a move here, not advisable because you're both going to be so slow. Anyone behind you is probably going to ram you. Okay, you can go for a move into this corner. The DRS detection, I'll actually pull that back. This is the DRS detection. So if you've got a car ahead of you and you want to go for the overtake into this hairpin, go for it. Although it may be quicker to stay behind them around the hairpin and blitz past them with DRS. Okay, if you go for the move, you'll still have DRS, but you may take the hairpin so slow that they actually undercut you and you're still having to use the DRS to get past them. But you can get around this corner, brake at the usual points, get it slowed down more, first gear if you need to, and away we go. Again, that is a corner where if you are being overtaken, you can have a look at undercutting them. If they've got DRS, slipstream them down here. Okay, turn 12, brake at the usual points, but get it slowed down that little bit more. You may need first gear again because it becomes a very tight corner, as does this one going up the inside. You had to be cautious before, now even more so. Very slippy and careful of that curve. Throw it up the inside here, it can be done, but look where you end up, right at the edge of the circuit. So if you had a car next to you, good chance you're going to knock them off the track. So be careful if you're going to think about going for a lunge up the inside there. Again, if someone's overtaking you there, duck up the inside. Okay, miles off the apex through those first two, but we still keep it on the road. Better to miss both of the first two apexes and keep it on the road than apex the first one and end up off the road. Okay, up the inside here, not a nice one to go for because it's going to send the car out wide, and the same goes for this corner. Also, this curb, taking the tighter line, has a tendency to kick the rear out. Okay, so that was being off the racing line, so we'll go back to being on the racing line. Braking just before the 100, get it turned in, try and clip the apex. We've missed it a bit, but not too bad. And then aggressive and confident now. We're going to aim to go for the 5th gear, but I believe we do get it slightly wrong. We missed that curb again, which means we are going to have to go to 4th to get the front end tucked in there. There's my double turning. I'm getting better at it though, and then cautious with the throttle, and then aggressive when we can be. Heading down into this hairpin. I do like this corner. It's just one of those corners that, for me, I've got right into the rhythm of how to take that corner. Feels great driving the car. Turn 12 is a much trickier corner than that hairpin, but we'll do my usual rhythm. Nice use of the curb, much better exit, tyre marks, away from the apex, but it's not too bad as long as we can carry the speed. Tyre marks again, get it turned in, make sure we don't take too much curb, and aggressive on the exit. Apex the second part here, middle of the road, edge of the track, and then nice early downshifts, turn in, and aggressive on the throttle on the exit, mystery shadow, turn it in, and away we go. Now we're going to have a quick look at the pit exit, exceeding track limits, ETLs, and the pit entry. Now, you may not be able to see it too well here, but the pit exit is not a particularly difficult one. You come straight out of the pits, straight up the road, and do not cross this white line. If you do, the game is going to give you a penalty. As we approach the corner, the pit exit is here. Not back where we've just come from, where the wall ends. This here is the pit exit. If you're heading down the pit lane in qualifying and you've got a car here, get it slowed down. If you can't, it's one of those where if you were to cut that corner to get out of the way of someone on a hot lap, I personally wouldn't have a problem with it, but I don't know what the stewards would say. It's a very tricky one. In the race, if you're in the pit lane there and somebody else is here, it's a tricky one. If it's for position, this person has every right to just drive on and drive around the corner. This person can't go for the apex if that car is there. So you both have to be very, very careful. Okay, exceeding track limits, stuff we don't want to see. Using too much curb. We don't want to see people cutting corners or hitting cones, taking the mickey. I mean, obviously we are well off the track here, but it is the white line that dictates the edge of the circuit, not the curbs. So this is definitely exceeding track limits, as is this. As is this. You can just see there, the front two tyres are way beyond the white line. Okay, some might say it's only an inch or two, but that to me is way, which means that there's at least 3 cars off the road. That there's exceeding track limits, as is that. So we don't want to see any of that. Even this is. So is this. The white line is still there, showing the edge of the track. I can't say I've ever seen a red racetrack, unless it's on Wipeout. Anyway, okay. This is exceeding track limits, cutting corners. That is, I mean, we call it exceeding track limits to cover everything. Corner cuts, widening the track on entry or exits. I mean, that one, it may not look too bad to some, but when you actually look at it, that's definitely cutting that corner. And running wide, some people may say it doesn't help you, but if you're carrying a lot of speed and running wide, that's why you're running wide and you get an advantage, because you're carrying more speed. So some may think it's a tricky one, but There you go. Okay, we don't want to see people doing this. That is way too much curb. That one, just about alright, I'd say. However, that one, not so good. Neither is this. If you're hitting cone, you're off track. I wouldn't advise doing this anyway, but that was exceeding track limits. And some would say that is as well. This one definitely is. And now we're going to have a quick look at the pit entry. Most pit entries have a solid white line, a bit like the pit exit here, to show that that's pit lane. Now Texas, it's a dashed white line, which means that the pit entry is here, basically where this cone starts, because it's a hatched white line. So you can basically enter the pit lane at any point along here up to that cone. So the cone to the white line next to the red bit is your pit entry. Now, a few things you've got to be careful of is getting it wrong and shooting straight back onto the track. If you do that and you get a drive-through penalty, the stewards FRR stewards aren't going to take that off you because you've gone over that bit. We don't want to see people hitting this cone or turning left after the cone, and we don't really want to see people taking any of this red bit here. But I'll leave that one up to the stewards. But be careful on the entry into this pit lane. It's a tight one, it can be a slippy one, and if you're pitting, you've probably got knackered tyres. Okay, so the final corner then, that's exceeding track limits, and that's the end of the guide. So now we'll go on to a warm down lap, where once again I can say that these guides are aimed to help those who are struggling rather than those who are already quick. We have got track guides for all the circuits up to America, and I will get the last 2 or 3 done as soon as I can, but I wanted to get them done a long time ago, but I just haven't had the time. But the way things are going, we've heard nothing about 2015 on the PS4, so we could be playing this game for a while. Now, if you're interested in joining a league, front row racing, and we haven't confirmed it yet, but we will be doing a league on F1 2015. We just haven't confirmed what format we're going to do it in or anything like that. And obviously there's going to be a gap between the end of our current season and the new game coming out, so we need to work out what we're going to do in between that gap. One thing we don't want to do is start a whole new season to then find that 6, 7, 8 races in the new game comes out, because that would just be a waste of time. So we will confirm what we are going to do as soon as possible and let you guys know. But if you are interested in joining the league, feel free to come and find Front Row Racing on Facebook. That's where we do most of our business. And send a message to the page, and one of the admins will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so as we approach the final corner, he's been Ted Craftsticks. He's off to get himself a burger. I've been Front Row Racing DP. Thanks for watching, and I hope this has helped.